What's going on, guys? John here with Jack for another episode of Talking Ball, and a very special episode, a historic night in the NBA draft, of course, ending last night. And wow, it was not necessarily surprising. Everything pretty much went as we thought it would, Jack, but there was definitely some intrigue, being the Jimmy Butler trade, and just, some interesting picks and guys who are going to be potential stars or role players for the teams that they went to. So, Jack, if you want to give any thoughts, and then we'll get right into 1 through 5 here.
Yeah, I think what you said in the beginning of the video is definitely rang true. This draft actually went pretty much according to plan, which was surprising. And that almost never happens. And starting with the first two picks here, Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball, obviously what everyone had projected, and, very exciting times for both of those franchises, with the Sixers adding Fultz with Embiid, Simmons, Saric, Covington, just a lot of talent on the Sixers, and we'll get into some of their later draft and stash selections as we go on in this video. And then the Lakers adding Ball to Ingram, Clarkson, Randall, obviously flipping Russell for Lopez, and the selection there. And so the Lakers also are showing a lot of promise and, hoping to woo some future free agents, namely Paul George.
Yeah, and, Fultz, we don't need to get into that too much. That was exactly what we thought they'd do. That was the right pick, and, it gives them, the point guard that they need there with already Ben Simmons, who will also do some handling the ball type roles. But getting into the Lakers, as a Lakers fan, I was really happy they didn't trade for Paul George, because I was a little worried that was going to be a subject of last night, that they were going to trade the number 2 pick and maybe someone else to Indiana for Paul George, when Paul George has made it abundantly clear that he wants to come to the Lakers next season, and any team that is going to trade for him is going to have a rental until he's a free agent and can go to the Lakers. So I was really happy they didn't bite the bullet and pull the trigger on George. I think Ball, as much as I believe the Lakers that they wouldn't go for Ball, he is the right pick there, and I don't think LeVar is going to be that much of a problem now that his son is in the right place, and he's going to be a bona fide blue-chip guy, someone they build the franchise around.
Right, and moving along here to the Celtics, their East Coast rival counterpart here, surprisingly, kept it going here and went with Jason Tatum, true to form, true to market. And obviously the fact that Josh Jackson didn't want to work out for the Celtics, didn't want to be a Celtic, played into this selection based on Danny Ainge's comments after the draft, or after the Tatum pick. And Tatum's going to be a great fit just because of his offensive polish already at the 19-year-old. Year younger than Josh Jackson, actually. And I think his defensive ability will improve vastly under Brad Stevens in that competitive environment there in Boston. Now at 4, Josh Jackson went to Phoenix, and I think that was a good selection as well. A lot of people compared him to Iguodala, and I think that's a fair comparison, and definitely much needed playmaker as well as, defender in Phoenix, bringing that level of toughness and competitiveness that they need on that roster.
Yeah, and I think, just to interrupt real fast, Jack, I think, the pick that I know me and you were kind of pulling for the Suns, if he didn't get taken by the Celtics, was John Isaac from Florida State. Correct. And I think maybe he would have, maybe not necessarily a better fit, but I think he would have been a more interesting fit for Phoenix, since they have so many talented guards. And Jackson obviously will probably play small forward going forward at the next level. But, I think Isaac would have been a good pick there, but Jackson's still a solid pick. Not completely sold on him as making a full transition, but, when you have a work ethic like he does, then, I'm not going to necessarily bet against him.
Yeah, good point. And I think with a good note with a lot of these guys this year, a lot of good kids, good character, right, high quality work ethic. Not a lot of red flags this year on these prospects, and that's a good sign for the NBA and what these potential players could become. And moving to a guy who definitely was represented all of that, the 5th pick, the Kings. In a shocking revelation here, didn't. They picked the guy they should have.
Yeah, they didn't mess it up.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
who would have thought?
It's a stunning revelation, and it's definitely a step in the right direction. And the Kings altogether, we'll get into it later, but the Kings altogether had a really good draft class, and Fox definitely being the header of that draft class. He'll start right away. He'll pair up with Buddy Hield, and I think they'll be a really solid, tandem. And Fox, was the guy I thought the Lakers would go at 2, and I didn't think that'd be too high for him at all. So for the Kings to get him at 5, I think that was a great pick, and he'll be a really, really good player for a long time for them.
Absolutely.
And then moving on here to 6 to 10, we start with the aforementioned Jonathan Isaac from Florida State, who will come right in for the Magic, and their Serge Ibaka experiment definitely didn't pan out when they traded him to the Raptors. So Isaac will be probably the starting guy there in Orlando, and I think he's definitely got the potential to be a player who they can build a franchise around. And Orlando, I do wonder a little bit about Orlando. It was the right pick, definitely, but Orlando doesn't seem to really have a plan of what they're doing going forward. They've drafted a bunch of really solid players, but they don't have a clear focus going forward what they're trying to do.
If I could interject
Absolutely,
here.
Jack.
They did just bring in a new GM, John Hammond from the Bucks.
Right.
And so I think part of what you're saying is that they just now went into a new direction with this draft.
Right.
And so I think that, unfortunately for our guy, Mr. Isaac, it's a little bit of a confusing, muddled situation there in Orlando with, they do have talent on that roster, but they really haven't been able to put together, an identity for that team over the past few seasons.
Right.
And the one thing that I do think will be, a good pairing is the Aaron Gordon Isaac combination.
Yeah.
I do think that is a very intriguing combination at your forward.
Yeah, just in terms of athleticism and defensive ability, I think those two will make a great fit next to each other.
Exactly. And so I think their move into, this defensive mindset and with length as well I think that's the move that they made. And we'll talk more later on, but that is the clear mover for them in this class.
And then moving on here to 7, the Chicago Bulls, who of course got this pick from the Timberwolves after trading Jimmy Butler. They went and got Larry Markkinen, who, Jack and I, not the highest on Markkinen, but I think he'll be a solid, 3-point shooting stretch 4. He had some comparisons to Dirk Nowitzki. I wouldn't go that far. But I think he'll be a solid player. He'll fight for a starting role. I think he'll come off the bench as a rookie. But, he definitely gives new point guard Chris Dunn a player he can get the ball to on the wing and give them some offense. Then the Knicks at 8 went and got Frank Ntilikina from France. And, Nick Kalina, kind of a mystery. A lot of these foreign guys, you're not too sure what you're going to get from them. I would have rather the Knicks take the next guy we're going to talk about here, but Nick Kalina, definitely had, from the draft community, it seemed he had all the potential. So if he fills out and they do wind up keeping Kristaps, and at this point it looks like they're going to keep him, then that'll definitely be a good 1-2 punch for the Knicks going forward in the future. And then number 9 with the Mavs, Dennis Smith, as I mentioned, from NC State, a guy Jack and I both loved. We both believe he'll have superstar potential, and he injects the Mavs with some explosiveness, some scoring ability, some tenacity, and Dennis Smith is just a guy who wants to be great. And I think in the twilight of Dirk Nowitzki's career, he's going to be Dennis Smith is going to be able to shoulder the load a little bit for Nowitzki.
Exactly, and that was the one reason why I think we both thought he should have gone to the Knicks. The Knicks clearly made it, important. They are a triangle team, and so that's why they picked the French Frank at 8. But Smith could have played with, the comparison, as you mentioned, that some people are making with Markkinen to Nowitzki. Well, Porzingis really is that guy, right?
Right.
And so Smith could have had the chance to play with the modern day Dirk in New York, but instead he'll play with Dirk in kind of the twilight last year, maybe last 2 years of his career. But what I will say for Smith is, opposed to NC State, he's going to have a much more open, spaced court to work with Nerlens crashing to the rim and Dirk spacing it from the forward and center positions there.
And then here at number 10, we have Zach Collins from Gonzaga going to Portland. And I think this was a great landing spot for Collins. In Portland, he won't need to be, a lead guy. He'll definitely be one of the top dogs in terms of the front court. But, with a backcourt of C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard, you won't need to be asked to do too much. And I think for him, that's perfect. He might even come off the bench. So, that was a great pick, both for Collins and for Portland.
Yep, and to round out the lottery here with picks 10 through 14, 3 more picks in a row here, which I think were very good fits for their respective teams. And then the last pick of the lottery, definitely a bit of a question mark. But with the 11th pick, the Charlotte Hornets went with Malik Monk, who I just think is going to provide, the three-point shooting and explosive offense that they need. Like Monk, he has one skill. He puts the ball in the basket and he shoots threes. And the one thing that the Hornets have needed is an explosive scorer who can put in the three ball to pair with, Kemba Walker.
Yeah, now, and that's exactly what Monk does, like you said.
Right, and the only concern and something that John had pointed out was, he is a bit undersized at only 6'4", and one of the few prospects with a smaller wingspan than height. But, his offensive ability, and you saw in the finals this season, offense and scoring, you got to be able to keep up. And so Monk is definitely going to help teams and the Hornets be able to do that. Now, at the 12th pick, the Pistons picked Luke Kennard from Duke. And again, one of the rare prospects with a smaller wingspan than height. But unlike Monk, he's not nearly the explosive athlete. But Kennard, much more a refined offensive player and, able to move off ball much better than Malik Monk. He's going to come in right away and I think have opportunities in the rotation and potentially by the end of the year be a starter for this Pistons team, which could potentially, experiment with moving Caldwell Pope to the 3 just to give them more spacing and consistent shooting for this roster. Now, at 13, the Utah Jazz went with Donovan Mitchell, which, again, I think was a great fit. Just because, you don't know what's going to happen in this year's free agency with George Hill, with Gordon Hayward. And I think Mitchell, while listed on many sites as shooting guard, I think he's a point guard at the next level and has extremely high potential. This guy improved tremendously from his freshman year to his sophomore year. He's already going to come in and contribute greatly on the defensive end of the court. If offensive IQ and awareness and ability to run from the point, which will be a transition for him, but if he can do that at the next level, watch out, this guy could be very special. Then here, rounding out the lottery, the 14th selection, last pick here, Bam Adebayo. Definitely a bit of a question mark just because he's definitely a 5-man to me. They already have Whiteside locked up on a long-term deal. Are you really drafting just a backup big man at the 14th spot here? It just seems a bit early when they batted, someone on the wing or, maybe even a combo guard here. Or maybe the next selection, Justin Jackson, who went to the Kings at 15, could have been the pick just because he can guard, he can defend 1, 2, and 3, and shoot the 3 ball. And so he could have been a nice addition to the Heat and had, more opportunities there as well.
Yeah, and just to talk about Bam Adebayo, I completely agree with you, Jack, and I think it was a little bit maybe of Pat Riley hedging his bets a little bit with Hassan Whiteside, who can be a dominant player any given night and, look like a top 10 player any given night, but at the same time look like a backup or a guy who should be in the G League any given night as well. So I think Whiteside's inconsistency led to them going and getting Adebayo, who's, still pretty young, obviously, at just about 20 years old. So he'll come in, he'll be able to play backup, and can potentially develop either into a great backup center, even though the league is going a little smaller and he isn't huge at 6'10", but can develop into a backup center or maybe even the starting center if Whiteside continues to not live up to his potential.
Well, I'm not quite sure I agree with you on Whiteside's inconsistencies to that extent there, John. I do think that Adebayo is a good security blanket for the Heat to have in that sense. However, I just feel there could have been other options they could have targeted later on. That's it for us, guys, reviewing the lottery here. Check out our other draft videos focusing on some of the teams, as well as our overall draft review, which is coming up later this week. Thanks for listening, guys.